Now the News4 Jax I-Team is helping you better understand renters' rights. The most common complaints we receive into our I-Team, they're about mold and maintenance problems.
Investigator Jennifer Waugh is getting you answers about what to do if you have issues with either where you live. And we want to warn you, the video you're about to see may be hard to watch.
The mold is everywhere. It's here, it's here.
Trista Wallace says she hasn't been able to use the bathroom in the apartment she rents for months.
It's mold all through there.
She says the mold bothers her the most, even though the sink doesn't work, the plumbing's backed up.
This toilet has been like that for months. Oh, God. Yeah, so it's unlivable. The mold is bad.
The smell is unbearable.
And the plumbing's been a problem for how long?
The plumbing's been a problem since I've been here for a year, honestly. But this is just bad. Like, it's unlivable. And this won't go down. Like, why is it turning brown? You know? Flies everywhere. I can't. Move this out of the way. Look, the wall's just caving in. It's bad.
How have you been using the restroom and showering?
So I use the porta potty up the street. I pee in the cup and I take bird baths in my kitchen.
You pee in a cup?
Yes, ma'am. I have no choice. I can't use that. And if I have to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, where can I go?
Wallace says she told the property manager.
So I went up there and I told him I didn't want to cause any trouble. I said, but I can't live in here. The mold, I noticed it was spreading. I asked them if they can do anything. They was like, sure, we'll come look at it. They did inspections and they did look and they looked and they was like, yeah, it's bad. Nobody came in and fixed it. I was like, no, sir, nobody came to fix it.
Frustrated, she says she stopped paying her rent and was then served with an eviction notice. We went to the office to find out what's going on.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Waugh with Channel 4 News. I'm here to talk with someone about the living conditions in Unit 64.
An employee who we're not identifying told us she had no idea about the mold or plumbing problem in Wallace's apartment. She'd only been working here for 3 weeks. We spoke with her manager then on the phone, who says they have no record of any maintenance order in Wallace's unit either. Wallace acknowledges she made a mistake not documenting her complaint, a mistake any tenant should know will make it harder to dispute an eviction in court, especially since under state law, a tenant cannot just stop paying the rent if they're unhappy with the living conditions.
The rules that permit the withholding of rent are contained in different parts of the statute. And if you don't follow the procedures exactly right, the law might not protect you.
Local attorney Mary DeVries with Jax Area Legal Aid says if you have a mold or maintenance problem, there are specific steps you need to take to be protected under the law. First, you need to document your complaint in writing with the landlord or property manager. Send an email or even a text. Next, under Florida law, if you think your living conditions are not safe, call code enforcement. If inspectors find a violation, the owner will be cited and fined if they don't fix it. Once you have both the documented complaint and the code enforcement report, then you have to legally give notice to the landlord of your intent to stop paying rent. And that notice needs to contain very specific information.
The notice needs to identify the issues or the problems with the unit. It needs to advise the landlord that if the repair isn't made in 7 days, they're going to exercise their right to withhold the rent or to terminate the lease. This notice needs to be in writing. It needs to be mailed or hand-delivered to the landlord.
Wallace says she had no idea the legal steps she had to take. Unfortunately, the eviction filed against her will remain on her record unless she disputes it in court. Jacksonville Area Legal Aid does provide free legal advice and can help represent you in court if you're being evicted. They have offices throughout Northeast Florida. The Jacksonville office number is 356-8371. Now, one more thing you should know about mold. Attorney DeVries says the mere presence of it is not considered a code violation under Florida law, which means landlords are not required to fix mold unless you can prove that it's causing you or someone in your home to be sick. You should still call code enforcement to report it. While the city says inspectors are not trained to detect mold, nor are they set up to test for it, mold can be caused by some other problem in the home, a leaky roof or windows, which could be a code violation. Code enforcement can then require a landlord to repair that problem, which could then fix the mold problem. Jennifer Waugh, Channel 4, the local station.
Well, mold can be a serious problem for some renters, especially during these hot summer months.
Yeah, and forcing a landlord to fix it isn't always easy as you think. News 12's Walt Kane is in your corner to explain your options.
At Kane in Your Corner, we get a lot of complaints from renters about their living conditions. Anthony writes, I was wondering if you can help my sister. She has 7 children. They're always sick, lots of black mold. Anthony even sent us some pictures, and yes, you can see that does look like a lot of mold. So what can Anthony or his sister do? And what could you do if you find yourself in the same situation? Well, if you live in New York City, the answer is clear. Landlords who have buildings with 3 or more apartments are required to keep them free of mold. Everywhere else, a little trickier. New York State, New Jersey, and Connecticut all have laws saying apartments must be safe to live in, but there is no legal limit for mold like there is with lead, where once you go above it, it's unsafe. Each case has to be handled individually. So what do you do if you have black mold in your apartment? Well, experts say the first step, notify the landlord. If they don't fix it, you can then call your local health or building department or go to court. You're allowed to sue for medical bills, damage to property, and pain and suffering. A couple of things to keep in mind. First, that mold typically does have to be the landlord's fault. It can't be the result of something that you did. Also, I hear a lot of people say, I'm not paying my rent until this gets fixed. Well, if you're thinking about doing that, you might want to talk to an attorney first, because there's a right and wrong way to withhold rent, and if you do it the wrong way, you could wind up evicted. Do you know something I need to investigate or have a consumer question? Call me at 732-738-KANE. Email kaneinyourcorner@news12.com or find me on social media. In Your Corner, I'm Walt Kane, News 12.
Your apartment, Chris.
Yes, Stephanie, a little legal advice from an expert tonight. Landlords have responsibilities, but so do tenants when it comes to mold. I got some advice on how to win a mold case in court from an attorney who fights for renters. Attorney Jessica Klein says if you want to win a mold case in court, you can never have too much paper trail.
The first step a tenant should do is write a letter to their landlord or the property manager. They want to do that immediately, and you want to put it in writing. You want to have it dated and signed, and you want to keep a copy of that.
And don't forget, because that written notice is required under the statute, photographs are just as important. Klein says lab results like these can help too. But once the landlord is notified that mold even could be present, they have to take steps to investigate and correct the problem.
If there's a water leak that's creating the mold, then they would want to investigate where that water's coming from, cause the water to stop. It just depends on what the issue is.
If the landlord does not take corrective action, then the tenant can file one of these, a tenant's assertion and complaint. But the tenant cannot just stop paying rent.
And they can pay their rent into escrow. So the rent does continue to get paid. The tenant cannot withhold rent in Virginia.
In the end, a judge would decide who gets that escrowed rent, either the landlord or the tenant. In extreme cases, a tenant can win relocation, but Klein says those are rare, and judges look at each case on its own merits. So what if you think that you not only have mold, but you believe that that mold is making you sick? Well, Klein says that's when it becomes a different kind of case, and you'll need a specialist, a personal injury lawyer. Chris Horn, 10 on your side.
The CBS 13 News at 10 continues.
Well, they thought it was COVID, but a local family now believes they actually got sick from mold growing in their rental home, and they're not alone. So what are your rights if your life is turned upside down by mold?
CBS 13's Julie Watts is getting answers.
Yeah, guys, mold is a complicated one. Part of the problem is there are no state or federal exposure limits, so it's difficult to prove when mold is actually a health threat. But one thing is clear. California law requires landlords provide a safe and healthy home.
It's all about survival when you're in the wild, right?
Camping out with the family may seem like fun, but for the Crenshaws, they say it was anything but.
This is day 2.
Their saga began over the holidays when Carl and his wife thought they had COVID. Then they discovered the mold.
We thought we had COVID.
You now think it was mold symptoms?
No, we know it is now.
They say their symptoms got so bad they moved their family of 7 into a tent in the yard as they waited for their landlord to remediate the mold. When the contractor finally came, Carl took this video of the contractors who he says simply scraped and painted over the mold without removing their belongings to prevent contamination or removing the contaminated drywall to treat inside the source of the mold.
So you're not removing no wall, it's clean?
Yeah, it's clean.
Real estate attorney Joe Tobner does not represent the Crenshaws, but says when a tenant notifies a landlord of mold in writing, they must properly remediate the mold.
It's really typical for us to find negligence in mold cases because to do it the right way is expensive.
While California law doesn't require a specific protocol, Tobner says they should move the tenants and their belongings out, have contaminated items cleaned off-site, treat the source of the water intrusion, remove contaminated drywall, treat the interior of the walls, then retest for mold.
Anything outside of that protocol is going to give rise to liability.
Tobner says in some cases a lawyer may be your only option. They can sue your landlord to cover monetary damages and emotional distress and even the cost of a rent increase if you have to move. But he says health claims can be tricky. The Crenshaws paid for multiple mold tests.
So we were breathing this stuff in.
Crenshaw's landlords, Arbors at Antelope, would not tell us whether they had the unit independently tested, but said in a statement, "We take matters like this very seriously and scheduled initial remediation as quickly as possible." Those repairs were performed and completed by a licensed contractor. Now, California Health and Safety Code requires property owners provide a rental unit that is safe and healthy. If a property owner does not respond to mold concerns, a local code enforcement agency can require the property owner to correct the problem.
But look, it's growing back.
Carl called code enforcement back in January, but the landlord still hadn't completed the work when we visited in March.
This is what they call repairs. They were going to just cover it up and try to move us back in.
Code enforcement tells us they finally signed off in April after additional work was done, but says they're only required to address visible mold, so they don't test the air or address hidden mold that may be growing inside the walls. We spoke with some of Crenshaw's neighbors who tell similar stories of mold. An attorney representing 86 tenants with mold complaints in this complex tells us several have young children.
The research is really clear that kids that live in uninhabitable conditions are going to have long-term health impacts.
So why not just move? Well, several renters tell us they either can't afford high rents right now or don't have money for deposits, applications, or movers. Others say their applications are being denied as more landlords require high credit scores and incomes.
My baby's toys.
Meanwhile, the Crenshaws say they had to send most of their belongings to the dump.
Brand new mattresses.
They're now staying in temporary housing while they struggle to find a new permanent, mold-free home that they can afford.